Grimdark. Half off! Sorcery in Conan, but more specifically beginner-level sorcery, has been the subject of debate for some time around players of both the tabletop and video games. Today, we'll be settling arguments on message boards dating back over 2 decades, as we go over the types of magic, how to learn it, and what different levels of the craft in Conan would look like. There are 4 major orders not affiliated with a specific god that control much of the teaching of sorcery in Conan. They are the Black Ring, Scarlet Circle, Black Seers, and White Hand. This leads most seeking to learn the ways of sorcery, mesmerism, and magic to Stygia, Katai, the Himalayan mountains, and Hyperborea, respectively. If you would like to know more about all of those cultures, consider checking out our All Cultures in Conan video, linked below. There are also religious associations which practice forms of magic, such as priests or heralds of Mitra, Set, Ibis, and Zotli. Finally, the most rare form of learning magic is presented to us in the Tower of the Elephant, in which a genuinely alien being teaches advanced methods of magic to a corrupt sorcerer turned warlord via torture. So let's classify all these because it can get a bit messy and a lot overly complicated. The 4 major orders we'll call secular orders, both for their lack of specific god association and often involvement in politics. God-affiliated groups will be referred to as religious orders, for obvious reasons, as they also inform tenets of faith for the practitioner's daily life. Lastly, situations such as those found in the Tower of the Elephant will be referred to as Eldritch orders. Since the universe of Conan has evolved, especially in the 1970s to now, such types of instances have been used to canonize the Cthulhu mythos, first among fans and then among authors of various stories. This, of course, includes things like the Elder Sign and drawing deep connections between the Conan tome, known as the Book of Skylos, which we also have a video on, by the way, and the later 700 AD written Necronomicon by Abdul al-Hazred. We'll revisit these later in the video, but right now, a far more pressing question is simply, what is magic in Conan? Since Conan is largely inspired by a cyclical view of our real-world ancient history, so too are its titles of magic. Just like real-life occult orders, the terms sorcerer, druid, warlock, witch, and wizard are all merely a matter of cultural variation on the same formula. There are no real people born with magical talent, but rather high learning ability of what psychologists would refer to as high fluid IQ, meaning the rate at which someone learns and extrapolates information. The fantasy tabletop cliché of intelligence equaling magic ability makes perfect sense in Conan. Using the Book of Skylos and the life of Conan's archenemy, Thoth Amon, for reference, we can argue that the best way to describe sorcery in Conan would be unweaving or untangling the strands of fate or the fabric of reality, utilizing a series of culturally dependent methods. Thoth Amon actually gets the second half of his name from killing his best friend when they were kids to take his place as an apprentice to a priest of Ibis, which is how and where he began his journey into magic. Eventually, this would lead him to studying dark magic and the serpent god Set, who, when he would eventually take over Stygia, would replace Ibis as the most popular deity, for obvious reasons. This is a great segue into the most basic division of magic historically and in Conan, see, to match up. White, right hand, or light magic versus black, left hand, or dark magic. It's pretty intuitive to tell which is which. Light magic is things like healing, being in tune with nature, and serving gods like Mitra who promote healthy civilizations through concepts like justice. Dark magic is the worship of described demon gods, illusions, creating false realities to con others, and necromancy, or the summoning of the undead. The types of magic we've seen on display that do not require specific artifacts to use, and have been featured in the Conan tabletop as well as video games, I have classified into the following 9 categories: necromancy, demonology, mesmerism, heraldry, shamanism, templarism, tempestism, eldritch, and clergy. Necromancy is the summoning of the undead. Demonology is the summoning of, you guessed it, demons. Mesmerism is the creation of illusions and false realities. Heraldry is the making of a pact with a demon, eldritch entity, or positive entity which fundamentally alters the fabric of one's soul in return for entity-specific powers. This is usually used as dark magic, but can come back as white magic, though we haven't seen that in the universe, to be clear. Shamanism is effectively the druidism of the setting, relying on communing with animal and/or plant spirits, usually for physical attributes such as strength, speed, or endurance. I should mention that this isn't the shamanism of, say, a video game, or druidism of a video game, where you would conjure vines, but more like, I have taken the spirit of the bear within me, and I am using its strength, which is something we see from the Sumerian bear shaman, which you can play as in Age of Conan. Templarism is effectively a form of energy vampirism, most commonly used by warriors on the battlefield who drain the life force from others and add it to their own power in battle. Now, this is actually very interesting because Templarism actually correlates to a real phenomena which people have reported in various ancient cultures. You've heard of the pranic vampire or the Chinese vampire from either India or China respectively. This is the idea of a vampire who steals life force energy and uses it to empower themselves. This is highly connected to that myth, though Templars aren't considered to be undead. They're considered to be energy manipulators, and I find this very cool. Again, you can play as one of these in Age of Conan, the 2008 game, Dark Templar. Tempestism is specific to the worship of the snake god of Stygia, Set, and eventually allows one to take on the form of a giant serpent while allowing for several other snake-related abilities along the way. And you guessed it, you can play as a Tempest of Set in Age of Conan Unchained. Eldritch is anything that has to do with bringing the Cthulhu mythos, Deep Ones, Elder Things, etc. into the world of Conan, especially through cults and the summoning of abominations not related to demons or the undead. Things like horrors, in quotes, is a lasting staple of Lovecraft in role-playing games, for example. Horrors, it distinguishes them from demons. When it is wholly alien, makes you go mad, or older than time, it is Eldritch. Clergy is specific to the god Mitra, except in the case of the Vendhyans, who worship a deity who they believe to be the father of Mitra, called Asura. It mainly consists of healing the sick or injured, the archetypal white magic. Now that all of that has been covered, let's go deeper into the 4 larger orders in the Hyborian Age. Come back for part 2, where we cover the rest of what we talked about in our intro.